In a bustling city, where the bright lights masked the shadows lurking in the corners, lived a beggar named Ibrahim. With a tattered coat and sunken eyes that spoke of untold hardships, he sat at the same corner every day, watching the world rush past him. Ibrahim's existence was marked by a constant struggle for survival, yet his spirit remained unbroken, shaped by a past filled with dreams and promises unfulfilled. Ibrahim once had a different life. He was a teacher, respected in his community, filled with hope for the future. His passion for education was infectious, inspiring many young minds. However, a series of unfortunate events led to his downfall, betrayed by a close friend who swindled him of his savings, and a sudden illness that left him unable to work. As the layers of his former life peeled away, he found himself on the streets, grappling with loneliness and despair. The script opens with a calm introduction to Ibrahim's daily routine. The story delves into his encounters with the passers-by, each interaction a mirror reflecting society's indifference to the plight of the less fortunate. A businesswoman, rushing to a meeting, throws a few coins without making eye contact, while a group of teenagers mock him, oblivious to the pain hidden behind his weary smile. This establishes the tone of the narrative, underscoring the isolation and judgment faced by those in his position. As the story progresses, it introduces the other characters in Ibrahim's life, providing insights into their thoughts and emotions. There's Amina, a kind-hearted woman who works at a nearby cafe and occasionally brings Ibrahim leftovers, seeing him as more than just a beggar. Her small acts of kindness become a beacon of hope for him, reminding him of the goodness still present in the world. The narrative shifts to explore her own struggles, balancing her job while caring for her sick mother, reflecting the universal theme of hardship. The tension escalates when Ibrahim learns that a new development project will soon demolish his corner, displacing him and other beggars. Fear grips him as he contemplates where he would go, his sense of safety rooted in the familiarity of the streets he called home. In his desperation, he decides to confront the developers, hoping to plead for their mercy, but his attempts are met with cold indifference. This segment of the script focuses on Ibrahim's internal conflict, his desire for justice clashing with the harsh reality of his situation. As the climax approaches, a turning point occurs when Amina, moved by Ibrahim's plight, decides to take action. She rallies her friends and community members, sharing Ibrahim's story through social media, creating awareness about the realities faced by the homeless. The narrative builds momentum, capturing the growing support from the community, highlighting the power of collective action and empathy. This section of the script emphasizes themes of solidarity and social justice, resonating with the audience's sense of morality. The story reaches its dramatic climax when a protest is organized against the developers. Ibrahim, emboldened by the support of the community, stands at the forefront, sharing his story and the stories of others like him. His voice, once silenced by despair, now resonates with strength and defiance. This moment becomes a powerful catalyst for change, demonstrating the impact of one person's courage to speak out. The emotions are raw as the audience witnesses the transformation of Ibrahim from a passive victim to an active agent of change. In the aftermath of the protest, the script delves into the consequences. The developers are forced to reconsider their plans, and for the first time, Ibrahim feels a glimmer of hope. The narrative explores the aftermath of the protest, reflecting on the changes in the community's perception of homelessness. People who once walked past Ibrahim with indifference now see him as a person with a story worth telling. The somber tone shifts slightly, offering a hint of optimism while still acknowledging the ongoing struggles of the homeless. The conclusion of the script ties together the themes of betrayal, loneliness, moral conflict, and justice. Ibrahim, though still living on the streets, now feels a sense of belonging within the community that fought for him. Amina and her friends continue to advocate for the homeless, ensuring that their voices are heard. The final scenes leave the audience with a lingering sense of hope and a call to action, urging them to reflect on their own perceptions of homelessness and the importance of compassion in a world often consumed by apathy. In the end, Ibrahim's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a poignant reminder that behind every face of despair lies a story waiting to be told, and the possibility of change is within reach if only we choose to see it. The city was alive with movement, cars honking impatiently, street vendors calling out their daily deals, and pedestrians weaving through the crowded sidewalks. Towering buildings loomed over narrow alleyways, their windows reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. In the midst of this bustling chaos, near the entrance of an old market, sat a frail man on the cold pavement. His name was Ibrahim. Dressed in layers of worn-out fabric, he blended into the cityscape like an unnoticed fixture, his presence acknowledged only by a few sympathetic souls. His back rested against the brick wall of an abandoned shop, a small metal bowl placed beside him with a few scattered coins, remnants of the generosity of strangers. He sat there every day, from sunrise to nightfall, watching the world move around him as if he were invisible. Despite his ragged appearance, there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself. He did not beg aggressively, nor did he wail about his misfortunes. Instead, he simply sat, observing, lost in thoughts of a past that felt like another lifetime. Once he had been a school teacher, standing before eager young minds, shaping futures with knowledge and wisdom. But fate had been unkind. A betrayal by a trusted friend left him bankrupt, and an illness drained what little strength he had left. With no family to turn to, the streets became his only refuge. As the evening deepened, the aroma of fresh bread and sizzling meat from a nearby food stall drifted toward him, awakening a hunger he had long since learned to ignore. The vendor, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, glanced at Ibrahim but quickly looked away, too busy with paying customers to acknowledge his presence. Amina, a young woman working at a small tea stall across the street, often noticed Ibrahim. Unlike most, she did not see just a beggar. She saw a man with a story, a man who once belonged to a world beyond these streets. Occasionally, when her boss wasn't watching, she would slip an extra piece of bread or a cup of tea onto a napkin and place it beside him. She never asked him about his past, nor did she expect gratitude. She simply understood. As night fell, the city lights flickered to life. But for Ibrahim, the darkness was more than just the absence of sunlight. It was a reminder of his isolation, his insignificance in a world that had moved on without him. He pulled his thin shawl tighter around his shoulders, his mind drifting between past and present. Somewhere deep inside, a voice still whispered that life could change, that fate could be rewritten. But in a world that had long forgotten him, did hope still have a place? Little did he know, the next few days would bring a storm that would shatter the monotony of his existence, forcing him to confront not only his past, but also a future he never imagined. The days that followed felt like the tightening of a noose, subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. Ibrahim had grown used to being invisible, a forgotten man lost in the backdrop of the bustling city. But now, something had shifted. People whispered when he passed, their eyes lingering a little longer. The market, once indifferent to his presence, now seemed to regard him with quiet suspicion. It started with a question. One evening, Amina hesitated before handing him a cup of tea. Her usual warmth was replaced with unease. "Brother, your name is Ibrahim, right?" she asked cautiously. He froze. It had been years since anyone addressed him by name. His grip on the cup tightened. "Yes," he replied warily. She hesitated, biting her lip as if debating whether to continue. "A man came here today, asking about you. He said he was looking for you. He mentioned that you used to be a school teacher." The words sent a shiver through him. He hadn't been a teacher in years, but the mere mention of it felt like a wound being reopened. "Who was he?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. He didn't say. Just that he'd come back. That night, sleep refused to come. Memories clawed their way back, dragging him to the day his life had collapsed. He saw Kamran's face, his closest friend, the man he had trusted more than anyone. The betrayal replayed in his mind like a haunting melody. The forged documents, the stolen savings, the eviction notice that stripped him of everything. Kamran had disappeared after that, vanishing into the city while Ibrahim was left to crumble. Could it be him? After all these years, had Kamran finally returned? And if so, why now? Days passed, but the mysterious visitor did not return. Instead, the unease in the marketplace grew. The shopkeepers who once ignored Ibrahim now seemed wary. Some avoided his gaze while others exchanged nervous glances when he walked by. Something was wrong. The answer came one afternoon, delivered by two men in suits. Their polished shoes and crisp shirts stood in stark contrast to the dust-covered pavement. Ibrahim had seen men like them before, officials, businessmen, people who wielded quiet power. "You're Ibrahim, correct?" one of them asked, his voice smooth but firm. Ibrahim studied them carefully. "What do you want?" The man smirked. "Just some advice. Leave this place." A cold wave of dread settled over him. "Why?" The second man, stockier and with a hardened expression, crossed his arms. "This market is becoming part of a redevelopment project. People like you don't belong here." The words stung, but it was their tone that struck him deeper. "I've been here for years. No one cared before. Why now?" The first man sighed as if dealing with a stubborn child. "Your name is resurfacing, Ibrahim, and some people don't want you around. Do yourself a favor. Disappear." With that, they walked away, leaving behind a silence heavier than words. Ibrahim remained still, his mind racing. He had spent years living in the shadows, ignored and forgotten. Now suddenly his past was being dragged into the light. Someone had recognized him. Someone wanted him gone. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him. Not just fear, but anger. A fire long extinguished flickered back to life. He had already lost everything once. He would not lose again. As night fell, Ibrahim made a decision. He would not disappear this time. He would find out who was behind this and why. The night was thick with silence as Ibrahim stood outside the market, staring at the towering glass building across the street. Inside, beneath the fluorescent glow, sat the man he never thought he'd see again, Kamran. Rage and disbelief twisted inside him. The betrayal had never left his bones, but now, seeing Kamran draped in wealth while he had spent, Ibrahim stood motionless as Kamran's stunned expression shifted from shock to guilt. For a moment, neither spoke. The years of betrayal, suffering, and loss hung between them like an unspoken curse. Kamran finally exhaled, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ibrahim, I thought you were dead." Ibrahim cut him off, his tone sharp. "You made sure of that, didn't you?" His fists clenched, his body trembling with rage. Kamran's eyes darted around, as if searching for an escape. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he murmured. "I had no choice." Ibrahim let out a bitter laugh. "You had a choice, Kamran. You just chose yourself." The room felt suffocating. Kamran looked away, unable to meet Ibrahim's piercing stare. "I can fix this," he said suddenly. "I have money, connections." Ibrahim took a step forward. "You can't buy back what you stole from me," he said, his voice steadier now. "But you will pay for it." Kamran's face paled. Ibrahim could see the fear in his old friend's eyes, the fear of consequences, the fear of justice. For the first time in years, Ibrahim felt powerful. The past had haunted him long enough. Now, it was time to reclaim his future. Days passed, but the confrontation with Kamran lingered in Ibrahim's mind. He had left that night without violence, without revenge, only with the quiet weight of truth settling between them. Kamran had tried to bargain, to erase the past with money, but Ibrahim knew that justice could not be bought. The news spread quickly. Whispers turned into voices, and voices into action. Kamran's crimes, his fraud, his betrayals, were no longer secrets buried in time. Authorities launched an investigation, and soon, the man who once stole everything from Ibrahim now stood in court, facing the consequences of his actions. Ibrahim, however, did not stay to watch the final verdict. His battle was never about punishment. It was about reclaiming the life he had lost. The marketplace, once a place of silent judgment, now welcomed him with quiet respect. Amina, the woman who had once hesitated to hand him tea, now smiled warmly as she poured him a fresh cup. Sitting on a worn wooden bench, Ibrahim watched the city move around him.